Mayor Michael Bloomberg of New York has announced a big push to put pressure on lawmakers who will vote on new gun control measures in Congress. I discussed that and some other topics, including the Middle East, when I sat down with him this weekend in New York. Mr. Mayor, welcome back to the program.
Thank you for having me.
Always good to have you. Big week in the gun debate. I'll get to that in just a minute. Let me start with the president's significant trip to the Middle East. He's returned. Do you think he's erased any doubts about whether he's a stalwart supporter of Israel with his visit?
No, I think he certainly said that he was, and I think people believe that. I think this is going to go down in history as one of the few trips that an American president has made to Israel where there really were deliverables. He got Israel and Turkey talking to each other and restoring diplomatic relations, and I think that's crucial for the security of that whole area. He's got the Palestinians and the Israelis thinking long and hard about they're going to have to find some ways to resolve their differences, no matter how difficult they are. You know, when you get people talking, only good things can come out.
We'll be watching that closely as we're watching this gun debate, as I know you are. Here we are 100 days after Newtown this weekend, after this massacre. There is a Senate bill. It's moving forward, but the assault weapons ban has been taken out of the main bill. It appears to be more or less doomed in the view of most. Here's what you said right after Newtown when I had an opportunity to ask you some questions about it.
Right. The NRA's power is so vastly overrated. The public, when you do the polls, they want to stop this carnage. And if 20 kids isn't enough to convince them, I don't know what would.
The NRA's power does seem to be where it has always been. Do you fear that the moment that was created by Newtown has been lost?
Well, it would be a great tragedy for this country and for tens of thousands of lives if it is lost. Having said that, I am cautiously optimistic. I think when you have an issue where 90% of the public, 80% of NRA members even, say that they think we should have reasonable checks before people are allowed to buy guns. They all support the Second Amendment, as do I do. But there are an awful lot of people that think that this is one of the great issues of our times. We have to stop the carnage.
Congress is paralyzed, Mayor. You see that. I mean, you've got Democrats and Republicans who are not moved by these polls.
Well, you'll be better able to judge that after the recess. We're running ads around the country. We've got people manning phone banks and calling. We're trying to do everything we can to impress upon the senators that this is what the survivors want. This is what the public wants. This is what the 900+ mayors that are in our organization want. They're the ones that have to deliver safety to the streets every single day. This is what the 1.5 million people who've already signed up to our Demand a Plan website want. I don't think there's ever been an issue where the public has spoken so clearly where Congress hasn't eventually understood and done the right thing.
You don't think the assault weapons ban is going to pass?
Well, look, we've been fighting since 2007 to get a vote. We are going to have a vote for sure on assault weapons, and we're going to have a vote on background checks. And if we were to get background checks only, it wouldn't be as good as if we got both. But we demanded a plan, and then we demanded a vote. We've got the plan. We're going to get the vote. And now it's incumbent on us to make our voices heard.
But you sound, frankly, Mayor, much more resigned. I mean, after Newtown, you said the NRA is not as strong as it used to be. The NRA is proving to be exactly as strong as it used to be. And here you seem to be celebrating the fact that there is at least a vote, but that's a far cry from achieving the results that you said were essential.
And while I think we are going to win this, celebrating in advance isn't the right thing to do. We've got to go out. We've got a lot of work ahead of us. But I don't think we should give up on the assault weapons ban. But clearly, it is a more difficult issue for a lot of people. And I don't know that that reflects the NRA's power. It may be just that people have different views about assault weapons than they do about background checks. 90% of the people want background checks, period.
But you know the NRA says, look, if you do that, there's a secret agenda that the NRA and LaPierre talk about, which is to create a registry of all legal gun owners. And his view is, he said to Republicans, they either want to tax the gun or take them away.
Okay, yeah, he can say anything he wants, but the truth of the matter is this isn't about LaPierre. This is about the public wanting to be safe on their streets. This is about the public having the right to buy arms and the right to protect themselves and the right to use them for sport, for hunting, but also it's about the public's right to keep guns out of the hands of criminals and the mentally ill. That's in everybody's interest. And in fact, if you go back to 1999, Wayne LaPierre testified on behalf of the NRA that background checks were appropriate and should be done. And Congress back in 1968 actually made them the law of the land. But they don't apply to 40% of the gun sales today. Something like 58,000 gun dealers across this country. 3 times the number of McDonald's stores, as a matter of fact. There's gun stores every place in this country, and those gun sellers, they do background checks on all their clients. I think last year, 78,000 times, the government found reasons to deny people a permit to get a gun based on either they were criminals or they had mental problems. If that doesn't tell you that this is a real problem and that but good checks can really do something, I don't know what would.
Let me ask you about, in New York, the NRA has filed a suit to try to defeat some of these gun control measures, which are more robust than what the federal government is talking about within the state, that are about magazines, that are about background checks and assault weapons. How do you react to that?
Well, anybody has the right to go to court and sue over anything, and in New York, lots of people do that every single day. But the Supreme Court, which is the one that interprets what the Constitution actually means and says, has said clearly that reasonable background checks are consistent with the Second Amendment. That's what, in the end, is going to stop all of these other suits. That if the laws that they're trying to contest are consistent with that, they won't get very far.
One more on this. You made it very clear this week, you're paying attention to the vote in the Senate, in Congress,
yes,
and you're taking names.
Yes.
Will you target people, Republicans and Democrats, who do not support a weapons ban, an assault weapons ban, who do not vote for background checks? Will you spend money, lots of money, to target them in 2014 in the midterm race?
Well, let me phrase it this way. I think I have a responsibility, and I think you and all of your viewers have responsibilities to try to make this country safer for our families and for each other. And if I can do that by spending some money and taking the NRA from being the only voice to being one of the voices so the public can really understand the issues, then I think my money would be well spent, and I think I have an obligation to do that.
So you'll spend money on ads?
We're starting to run ads today or tomorrow. I think I've spent $12 million on running ads in 10 states around the country, explaining to the public what the issues are and how, and urging them to call their senators if they believe that we should have gun checks that stop criminals and people with mental illnesses from getting guns. They should call their senators.
Will there be a political price to pay for a Republican or a Democrat who fails to vote based on this public polling to make assault weapons banned or to vote for background checks?
If 90% of the public want something and their representatives vote against that, common sense says they are going to have a price to pay for that. The public is going to eventually wake up and say, I want to put in office somebody that will do the things that I think are necessary for this country. That's what democracy is all about. And all we're trying to do is to tell them what people are doing in Congress, who's voting for what, and then they can make their own decisions.
A couple minutes left. Let me switch gears and talk about the fight for personal freedom here in New York City. Those people who oppose your effort in the name of public health to limit portion size when it comes to sugary drinks. A judge has ruled against you, saying the law doesn't make sense at the moment. How far will you take this push to limit how much soda you can drink in New York City?
We're certainly appealing. We think the judge was just clearly wrong on this. Our Department of Health has the legal ability to do this, and we're not banning anything. All we're saying is we want to show you just how big the cup is. If you want 32 ounces, take 2 cups to your seat. If you want 64, carry 4. But our hope is if you only take 1, you won't go back. And
so
remember,
haven't you even won in losing, though? Wasn't this really about public awareness?
Oh, well, obesity this year is going to kill more people in New York City than smoking. And if you remember, when we put a smoking ban in, nobody thought that was going to work. Today, all of Latin America, all of Western Europe, and almost every big city in America and most of the states are smoke-free. This is another thing. Obesity is going to kill more people this year in the world than and starvation.
Well, what about
we have to do something
sodium-linked deaths in New York City? 23,000 back.
We've been very successful. You look, a lot of the packaged goods manufacturers are now advertising low sodium, and they've reduced the sodium in their products. Everybody's better off.
Well, where's the line? Would you ban the salt shaker?
We're not banning anything. We're trying to urge them to tell the public, which our job is to educate. It's the public's job to decide when they look on the grocery shelf or have the lever on a soda machine, which thing to take, which product is in their interest. All we're trying to do is educate, and then hopefully if they understand, they would be better off with one product or another. But they'll make the intelligent choice.
You could do ads for education. As the executive of New York City, you're telling people what they can and cannot do. Why is that government's job to do that?
We're not telling them at all. We're telling them what science says is in their interest or isn't in their interest. We allow you to smoke. We just don't let you smoke where other people have to breathe the smoke that that you're exhaling or comes from your cigarette. The same thing with obesity, which incidentally is a public interest because we're going to spend $5 billion on treating people with obesity in our hospitals in New York City alone this year. But regardless...
But where's the line? Where is it too far for government to go?
I do not think we should ban most things. I do think there are certain times we should infringe on your freedom, and that is, for example, if you're drinking, we shouldn't let you drive, because you'll kill somebody else. If you are carrying a gun, we shouldn't let you on an airplane. There's a lot of things that we do. If there's asbestos in the classroom, we should remove the kids from the classroom until you clean the air. But in terms of smoking, if you want to smoke, I think you have a right to do so, and I would protect that. If you want to own a gun, I certainly think that's constitutionally protected. You certainly have a right to have a gun if you want. If you want to eat a lot and get fat, you have a right to do it. But our job as government is to inform the public.
Mayor Bloomberg, thanks as always. And here with me now in the studio, Wayne LaPierre of the National Rifle Association. Mr. LaPierre, welcome back to the program.
Thanks, David. Good to be with you.
So, the legislative moment has arrived here on Capitol Hill. What's going to happen with gun safety legislation? Well,
I mean, you just heard Mayor Bloomberg, but he's going to find out this is a country of the people, by the people, and for the people. And he can't spend enough of his $27 billion to try to impose his will on the American public. They don't want him in their restaurants. They don't want him in their homes. They don't want him telling them what food to eat. They sure don't want him telling them what self-defense firearms to own. And he can't buy America. He's so reckless in his terms of his comments on this whole gun issue. He talks about guns buzzing. He's talking about machine guns. None of these guns are machine guns.
But is he going to have an impact politically? He wants to be a counterweight to you. He wants to go into these races in 2014 and spend along with you. Are you preparing to arm politically your people who agree with you, candidates and whatnot, in 2014?
We have people all over, millions of people, sending us $5, $10, $15, $20 checks saying, stand up to this guy that says we can only have 3 bullets, which is what he said. Stand up to this guy that says ridiculous things like the NRA wants firearms with nukes on them. I mean, it's insane, the stuff he says.
All right, but let me ask you about background checks, because the mayor referred to the polling. 90% of Americans want universal background checks. Here is this survey from Quinnipiac this week. Among those people who own guns, 85% support. Are you thwarting the will of the American people by standing in opposition to universal background checks?
No, not at all, because here's the thing. The whole thing, universal checks, is a dishonest premise. There's not a bill on the Hill that provides a universal checks. Criminals aren't going to be checked. They're not going to do this. The shooters in Tucson, in Aurora, in Newtown, they're not going to be checked. They're unrecognizable. NRA supported the National Instant Check System on dealers.
That was the reference to 1999 when you testified.
Yeah, we're $1 billion into this system now. It's not fair. It's not accurate. It's not instant. It's not instant. The mental health records are not in the system, and they don't prosecute any of the criminals that they catch. It's a speed bump for the law-abiding. It slows down the law-abiding and does nothing to anybody else.
But why not try to create a system where you could have a better opportunity to trace a gun that was used in a crime, even if it's not 100%. I mean, if you have, because you've used such incendiary language, the idea that there's going to be a federal registry, which does not exist today, on legal gun owners, even though Dick's Sporting Goods and others participate in this.
We've been trying for 20 years, and the NRA is up on the Hill right now trying to get this existing system on retail dealers to work. But here's what they want to do. They want to take this current mess of a system and expand it now to 100 million law-abiding gun owners. Every time a hunter wants to sell a shotgun to another hunter in Kentucky, every time a farmer wants to sell a rifle to another farmer, they want to make them go somewhere. Where are they going to go down? To a Walmart? Is Walmart going to want to see them walk in the door? The local police station, are they going to want to do it? There's going to be a bureaucracy. There's going to be a diversion of police resources.
But isn't that preferable to a big loophole where you have all the 40% of sales, private sales, one-on-one, where you've got no ability to trace it?
Here's the loophole. Society, the HIPAA laws, the mental health laws, the medical records, the Latham lenses, the shooters in Aurora, the shooters in Newtown, they're unrecognizable. They're not going to be in the system. Who is going to be in the system? You and me. And our names are going to be in the system. There is going to be a list created. That list will be abused. Some newspaper will print it all. Somebody will hack it. There will be a registry. The Obama's own Justice Department says they want a registry on this thing.
But you've been negotiating with some on Capitol Hill, like Senator Manchin. Is there any kind of background check you'd be willing to support, or at least not oppose actively, that could allow this to pass?
We want to fix the existing system on retail sales because our people are the ones that are going through it and are getting delayed. It doesn't work. Nobody gets prosecuted. It's completely ineffective. And the NRA wants to do the thing that makes people safe, which is, and I've been talking about it, I know the media doesn't want to talk about it, is putting security in schools, armed security.
Wayne, you keep saying that. Every time you've been here, we've talked about it, and I'm going to talk about it in a minute, but I just want to nail down this point because I think it's significant. Are you prepared to support something that would have some kind of background check pass Congress?
We are working on a bill right now that will hopefully at least get the records of those adjudicated mentally incompetent and dangerous into the check system that applies on dealers. Most of the states still do not even do that. We need to see if we can get that done. We're looking to get better enforcement of the federal gun laws. We're working on laws to beef up the penalties on straw purchases and illegal trafficking, which we want prosecuted. Look, we're 5 million families. We're 80,000 law enforcement families. We're 11,000 law enforcement trainers. We want to make people safe. That's what the NRA does every day.
You've opposed the assault weapons ban. There will be a vote on this separate from the main bill. Nobody really thinks it's going to pass. But the Vice President and the President are arguing that it should. Here's what Vice President Biden said this week. I'd like you to answer his challenge.
There's not one single thing being proposed, not one, not one, not one, that infringes upon anyone's Second Amendment constitutional right. This is not about anybody's constitutional right to own a weapon. Tell me how it violates anyone's constitutional right to be limited to a clip that holds 10 rounds instead of 30.
And here's why the whole thing doesn't work. It was lied into law 10 years ago. It didn't work. The studies show it didn't work. Anybody that knows anything about firearms knows that the AR-15, which uses a .223 cartridge, is at the very low end of the power spectrum of rifle cartridges. Every round that deer hunters use is more powerful. .243, .270, .308. 25-06, 7mm. This whole thing about the fact they're machine guns, they're different, they make bigger holes, they've rapid fire. It's all a lie. Gun owners know that. They may be a victim of the lies, but they know the truth.
But it's interesting. You're saying that it wouldn't work. You're not disagreeing with him when he says it's not an abridgment of the Second Amendment right.
Oh, it is an abridgment of the Second. They're the most commonly owned firearms in America, and it is an absolute abridgment under the Heller case. I mean, let me give you the real sad thing, though. Let me hold up a mirror right now to the whole national news media and the White House. I just got the track data from Syracuse University on enforcement of the federal gun laws. Last time I was here, I brought it from 2011. It just came out from 2012. Do you know where Chicago ranks in terms of enforcement of the federal gun laws? Out of 90 jurisdictions in the country, they ranked 90th. Why doesn't NBC News start with shocking news on Chicago? Of all the jurisdictions in the country, Chicago's dead last on enforcement of the federal gun laws. Why doesn't the National Press Corps, when they're sitting down there with Jay Carney and the President and the Vice President, why don't they say, why is Chicago dead last in enforcement of the gun laws against gangs with guns, felons with guns, drug dealers with guns?
And you support those as felonies, being charged as felonies?
Absolutely, and we want them taken off the street. I mean, if you're the president and the vice president and the attorney general, and your job is to enforce these laws against I'm talking about drug dealers, gangs, and felons that are walking around with guns in the street, and you don't do it, you bear some responsibility.
Do you think you can prevail? You think the NRA can prevail in New York? You heard Mayor Bloomberg saying you can bring suits, but it's certainly within the realm of New York State to pass the laws they did. It's constitutional to do so.
The laws they banned are some of the most commonly owned sporting firearms, target shooting firearms, self-defense firearms, and yes, they're protected under Heller, the guns they banned.
You brought up school safety. You were here last time, and when you addressed Newtown, you said that's the key. More armed guards in schools.
Yeah.
South Dakota has passed a law allowing just that. 27 provisions now being undertaken to arm school personnel. Were you right?
90% of school administrators, 90 say that armed security, police officers in schools make those schools safer. Not a mom or dad wants to drop their kid off at school and leave their kids unprotected. Yes, we were right. And we're right that the mental health system needs to be fixed. The civil commitment laws are in a mess. Every police officer knows that. We can't even, as I said before, I've been working for 20 years to get those adjudicated mentally incompetent and dangerous into the National Instant Check system. We're still trying to get that done, and we need enforcement of the federal gun laws. We want to do the real things that make people safe. I mean, what's appalled me about this whole debate is how little it's had to do with making people safe and how much it has to do with this decade agenda to attack the Second Amendment.
Bottom line, will President Obama sign a new set of gun control measures?
I hope we end up signing something that updates the system and gets those mentally incompetent and adjudicated into the system. We force the administration somehow to enforce the federal gun laws. I know they don't want to do it, but they ought to do it. It's their responsibility. That would make people safe. Put programs like Project Exile in every American city, where if you're a drug dealer, a gang member, a felon, and you touch a gun, it's a 100% certainty you're going to be prosecuted and taken off the street. That ought to start tomorrow morning, but it won't do it unless the national media gets on the administration and calls them out for their incredible lack of enforcement of these laws.
All right, we're going to leave it there. Wayne LaPierre, always appreciate you coming on and taking my questions.
Thanks for having me.